In years past, we've done these pre-Ramadan hauls and we've gone to places like Costco. So, Ramadan is a time where we literally consume less. But yet, we go to these stores and we buy so much. It's like the opposite of consuming less. And we may tell ourselves, well, we want to be prepared, we want to have our freezer stocked, we want to do this, we want to do that. Do you really need a 20-pound bag of chickpeas? I decided this year that we weren't doing that. We're not playing that game anymore, and we're gonna go to our own stores. Now, one of the things that Costco has is halal meat. But you know who else has halal meat? Your friendly neighborhood halal butcher. So I love a place that is local. It's right here. I did a whole thing of it on Instagram. Check it out. I bought meat. You know what else is great about your friendly neighborhood butcher store? Your friendly neighborhood halal market is they'll cut it for you any way you want. So for example, this is beautiful. Look at this. Look at this. Look at these short ribs. Like, you can't get this at Costco. You can't get this you can't get this anywhere. You gotta go to your halal grocery store and order this. So I got chicken, and yes, I will probably have to go to the market a couple of times during Ramadan, and that's okay. For today's video, we are going to be prepping beans. Now, I had some concern about prepping dried beans, cooking them. I mean, you can buy canned. There's 100% you can buy canned, but this is actually so much cheaper than canned. When you go to a local grocery store, your local, I don't know, you call it ethnic market. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. Anyway, I go to Afghan grocery stores. You may not get everything in the first store you go to. You may have to go to a couple of different stores. They didn't have kidney beans or black-eyed peas at the first store I went to, but they did at the second store. Not the end of the world. I mean, I could wait in line at Costco, or I could just go spend my money in a local grocery store and support a local family and everyone that they employ and support my community and actually feel good about knowing the people that I buy my stuff from. And if something goes bad or goes wrong, I can go, hey, Rora, dadi kharab shayda bani khats karidi, and they'll say, oh, khuri bakshan tsaqawardam. So that's why we're doing it this way. So in today's video, we're gonna prep these beans. We're gonna prep rice, we're gonna parboil it and freeze it. We're gonna do onions and we're gonna do garlic, because honestly, sometimes for me, the hardest part of any meal is, oh my gosh, I gotta peel and dice garlic or peel an onion or any of those things. So during Ramadan, during Roja, getting that stuff out of the way, you just feel so much better. You're like, oh, it's like half the work done already, right? So let's go do it. So I have my beans here, and I've got some water boiling. Technically you should boil, or they tell you should boil it, whatever. Put your beans in water overnight. I don't have the kind of time, I don't have the kind of energy, I don't have the kind of forethought. Maybe you do. Boil the water, and we're gonna soak the beans for a couple of hours. Here I have my Instant Pot pressure cooker thingy-majigger and Digi Bukhar, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our beans. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour these into. Now, these beans are gonna soak up all this water, so I'm probably going to have to change the bowl at some point. We'll see what happens. Isn't this fun? We all get to do this together for the first time, okay? I'm going to rinse all of these beans first, just a quick rinse. These are white kidney beans, which I just thought were kind of pretty, right? And I couldn't find regular kidney beans, or what I think of regular kidney beans, in the first store I went to. So I bought these, but I think they're beautiful. And of course, nukhad, chickpeas, garbanzo beans, whatever you call them, and black-eyed peas, which I love. I love black-eyed peas. We're gonna rinse these real quick, and then we're gonna cover them in hot water. So the black-eyed peas are expanding very quickly in this bowl. I'm going to split them into 2 bowls so it doesn't take that long. I used to have an electronic kettle, like an electronic tea kettle, water boiling thing, but I have an induction stove, so this thing works faster than any. چیش بودیه ترى توي چیش بودیه زنايم خبره نمي چیش دي chowjusha barki chowjusha barki means electric and chowjusha chai jush tea boiler. Okay, so we're gonna just set these aside and we're gonna move on to our next thing, which is onions. So while our beans soak, we're gonna get our onions ready. And I have red onions because red onions actually have less liquid. I have a tray here lined with paper towel, and I use this method when I'm gonna fry onions to make crispy fried onions, because a lot of the time the onions you get are so wet, you're boiling your onions for a long time before they get dry enough to fry. You can do this by hand, you can do this on a mandolin. I mean, I'm gonna go through every single way you can do it. I do it in my food processor. The other key here, if you're storing these for freezing purposes, when you're frying onions, if you're making crispy fried onions, you make them very, very thin so they get nice and dry and crispy. If you're storing them, you don't want them that thin because you don't want that much liquid in your onion. So we're gonna do it a little bit thicker, about 1/4 of an inch. So they're a little bit thicker than normal, okay? Okay, I made one set now fairly thick in case I needed them, but I'm gonna make these. You don't want them super thin like you would do when you're frying onions regularly because otherwise they're gonna have a ton of water. I did make one set that's pretty thick. I'm gonna let these sit here for a minute and dry out and put these in one just in case I wanted some thicker onions. I don't know if that made any sense. Anyway, these are onion goggles. I can't say for sure that they work 100%, but it makes for entertaining viewing. And they do kind of work. So first I'm going to, now you can slice these by hand if you don't have a food processor. Use a mandolin. They sell them fairly cheaply right now. I'm gonna show you the one I have. I have this. Make sure it has a little holder. Use it, because I didn't use it once and it was a big mistake. All right, so now we've got everything set up. If it doesn't fit, I cut them in half. Champion of onion cutting. Champion. Oh my God! Oh, right into my nose. Oh my God, Allah got me. I was bragging about my onion cutting and he was like, wow. Never brag on yourself, because I'm gonna show you guys what I look like right now. Ready? This is my current state. And this is after my onion goggles. That the fumes from these onions went directly. I don't know if you guys ever, if you eat sushi, but when you have wasabi and you just get that wasabi, that horseradish, and you just eat it and it just overwhelms all of your senses. While our onions are drying, I had to take a little bit of a break to wipe my face down. We're gonna do garlic. This is about 8 heads of garlic that were peeled by the magic of television. And here I have, you can use any ice cube trays you want. I have a lot of these silicone molds that I will use to put my garlic in. Then we'll freeze them and we'll show you how you can store them. We're gonna put these into a food processor. You can use a garlic crusher, chop it by hand, whatever you wanna do, okay? And I'm not gonna brag this time. We're just gonna fill up our mold. You can see that's about 1 of these spoons. It's about a tablespoon of garlic. Now, when I was growing up, my mom is a Rijin Warshe Horma type of Ramadan person. That's what we ate for Pesh Lamay, which most people call, or most people in the Arab world called sahur. And so I anticipated that my family would be the same, that we would just do what my parents did, right? Like what my mom did for us. But it turns out that my kids do not like eating non-breakfast foods in the morning. So we do things very differently in our home during Ramadan. And if you ask my kids about what we eat at iftar, and I did this because, coming up in our Ramadan series, we're going to have foods from all over the world. And I asked people on Instagram and TikTok, what food connects you to Ramadan? Like, what connects you to your faith? What is the food that you think about, when you think of Ramadan? And my kids said date shakes. And when I asked them, like, what did you, what about an iftar food? What about a, rojamat food? They're like, nah, dates, water. So we don't really do a whole lot that is particularly special during Ramadan. For iftar, we don't treat our evening meals like a Thanksgiving, every night of the week. It's a fairly simple meal, but they do remember what we eat for breakfast, for suhoor, which I think is kind of cute. Like, that's the time to them that they, even though they're like half asleep, and they remember what it is that we eat in the morning, which is super cute, I think. Now, for Ramadan prep, what I try to concentrate on are the things that are, what do you call them? Like trigger points or pressure points, or no, there's like a word for it. It's like the thing that, like a roadblock, but not really a roadblock, but like a hill kind of, or like something that's rough, like a sandpaper. You know what I mean? Like something that is just uncomfortable and that you don't want to do. Did I try too hard with that? So you're just like, oh, I'll just rather order. But the problem with ordering is it costs a lot of money. And also everything is boycotted. So doing these things, of course for Ramadan, but also just generally, will save you a lot of time and hassle and energy. I've seen some people who have some of these molds that have tops on them. Those are fantastic. But since I already own like 700 of these silicone molds, I just decided I'm just going to do this. So for me, a lot of the time when it's time to make dinner. And I have all these great ideas, right? I'm going to make all this great stuff, right? But then I think, I have to peel an onion and then chop it. And you see what happens to me when I chop onions. I'm sorry, I have to concentrate on this. So our onions have had some time to dry out, and now we are going to freeze them. You can put this in one large gallon bag, and it's pretty easy to just take a chunk out or do it individually. Now look, I know this is a lot of plastic. They're not reusable. I actually reuse these, okay? I know that maybe makes me cheap, but it's what I do. I wash them and it drives my family crazy, but I don't care. All right, I think we're good until I'm done. And cut, and cut. There's that video of one of the Kardashians like cutting up a cucumber, and she's doing it like backwards, and people were laughing. I think it was a Kardashian, I don't really know. And people were laughing and being like, ha ha ha, she doesn't know how to cut a cucumber. But I have to tell you, so the way that my kitchen is set up, I have to use my left hand, and I might just be giving her way too much credit, right? Maybe this isn't why, but I frequently have to do things backwards so that, because the camera is here, in order for the camera to be able to see what I'm doing. That's all. That's my whole story. That's not a good story. It's not a good story. That's it. That's all. That's all I had, is my understanding for one of the Kardashians. Or not a Kardashian. I don't know who she was. It helps not just make your life easier during the Ramadan, right? Like, so for me, Ramadan prep is actually, okay, so it gets you ready mentally and spiritually for this time that's coming up. So as you prepare your home, your kitchen, you are constantly thinking of the month ahead. And you're thinking of how the things that you do now will make it easier for you during that month, right? So don't think of it so much as like consumption or what am I going to eat, or, I'm going to prepare this recipe or that recipe. Think of it more in terms of freeing, two steps, really. First one is you are physically right now preparing yourself to meet this holy month inshallah, if Allah allows us to meet Ramadan, right? You are actually preparing yourself physically. But while you are physically preparing yourself, you think of the reasons why you're doing it, right? And the reason why is so that you have more time to do the things that you need to do during Ramadan. As people who are caretakers, right, we have a lot on our plates. And in addition to doing all the other things that we need to do, we know that people are going to be hungry, and we don't want to be spending, or at least I don't want to be spending a ton of my time where I could be doing other things that are more valuable during this holy month, right? Spending more time in worship, not being too tired to go to Taraweeh, not being too tired to get up for tahajjud every night during Ramadan, right? Like, so to make sure that we're not exhausting ourselves with these physical tasks that our bodies need, we want to prepare ourselves. So the goal of this preparation is not overconsumption or, and here's the other thing. A lot of you people who are like, oh, Ramadan's not about food. You don't eat. Really? You don't eat? You do eat. I think a lot of people who say that are not the ones who are responsible for preparing food in their homes. So they don't think about it. Food just, voila, magique, appears when it's time to break fast or when they wake up in the morning. It's just there. But there's somebody, I guarantee you, who is thinking about what you're going to eat. Or they're forced to take care of you. I don't know. I don't know your life. Okay, we're going to put these in the freezer flat like this so that they don't freeze up into one. It's not closed all the way. We're going to put these in the freezer so that they lie nice and flat and they get frozen, and then they're much easier to use. Our beans have been soaking. I boiled the water, so theoretically, I probably just could have let them soak for a couple of hours. I shot a bunch of other videos yesterday with some special guests, so I let them soak overnight. And you can see they've absorbed, almost all of them have absorbed all of the water. I topped some of them up a couple of times just to make sure that they were, fully soaked in water. But you can see now that they break apart easily with your hands, right? They come apart, right? You can't do that with beans when they're completely dry, but that comes apart. We're going to drain these off. I have two different kinds of pressure cooking devices. I have an Instant Pot and I have a stovetop pressure cooker. I'm gonna use both of them. I have 4 different kinds of beans, so I'm gonna have to do each in 2 rounds. I still think it's going to be faster than if I just let these beans boil for an hour or 2 hours on the stovetop. We'll see, but that's how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna use both of those pressure cookers. So let's drain these off and then get them in the boiling water to pressure and cook. Let me pull one out so you can see. That is a cooked kidney bean. All right, so now we have our black-eyed peas. We're gonna put them on this platter with some paper towel, let them cool and dry off for a couple of hours. And we're gonna do the same thing with all of our beans. We're gonna set all these outside with the others to cool, and then when they're all cooled, we're gonna put them in our freezer bags and get them in the freezer. The other thing that I'm gonna prep in advance of Ramadan is rice. We make rice a couple of different ways. You can do it dam pukht, which is just a one-pot deal, or sapeh. I prefer sapeh régime, which means you boil the rice first until it just gets a little bit al dente, and then you steam it. Because it's a 2-step process, it feels a little bit fussier, it takes a little more time. So what I've discovered is that you can actually do the first part, freeze your rice, and then just steam it. And when it's frozen, you just add your spices or your broth or whatever for the steaming process. And it turns out perfectly every time. So I have here about 6 cups of long grain Cellar rice. And you all know I only use one brand. That's it. It's the one brand I use. The audio cut out, I'm sorry. Bring your water up to a boil, add a couple of big pinchfuls of salt, add your rice, and then let it boil for about 3 to 5 minutes, just until it's barely tender. My rice has been parboiled. We're just gonna lay it out onto a platter so that it can cool easier. We're just gonna set that aside until it completely cools down, and then we're gonna put it into individual packages to freeze. This is our garlic. It's all frozen. Look at that. So we're just gonna pop it out and put it into a Ziploc bag. Put it into a bag. Put it into a Tupperware. Put it into a shoebox. I don't care. It would be weird if you put it in a shoebox, but maybe that's like the way you want to do it. You could also just keep it in here. For me, having it in something that takes up less space and is flatter is easier. And then you just pull them out since they're already individually frozen. Just pull out one at a time. My rice is cooled. We're gonna put it into these plastic bags because then we can just put them in the freezer flat. I'm gonna actually use a measuring cup. Fill the bag with however much cooked rice you need for your family. I usually make 3 cups of uncooked rice, which I think is, so I'm gonna add 6 cups of cooked rice to each of these bags. You wanna get as much of the air out as possible. So the beans are cooled now, and I am just gonna put them into these bags. I'm doing about 3 cups, which is how much you get in a can of beans per bag. I think the reason why I prep so many beans is because it's a great thing to have for soups and for stews. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit that bell notification so you know every single time we have a new video. Leave a comment. What is the thing that trips you up the most during Ramadan, but also just like when it's time to make dinner anytime you have like a busy week? And subscribe. You're already here and it's free, and of course it helps us so much in continuing to be able to make these videos for you. Until next time.